Better Buildings for Humans is powered by Advanced Glazings, makers of the Solera line of products. Solera is the leading glass glazing made specifically for architectural daylighting and with extreme insulation performance. Learn more at advancedglazings.com. Better Buildings for Humans podcast. I'm your host, Joe Menchefski, and this is the program where we take a look at the impact that the built environment has on our health, our wellness, our productivity, and our general joy of being alive. And we always look at sustainable design, and we also like to look at innovations in design and construction as well. And on that note, I'd like to introduce you to Jonathan Wolk from WOLK360. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, it's my pleasure. So let's learn a little bit about you first before we move forward. You're the founder and CEO of WOLK360. You guys are in Raleigh-Durham, right?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay,
yeah,
so
we do the whole triangle area.
Yeah, perfect. But you guys do it in an interesting and innovative way. You have architecture, construction, and real estate, and purchasing and sales of real estate all tied into one organization. Can you tell me about the path, Jonathan, that led you to creating this truly full-service company?
Yeah. And that's the whole idea behind the 360 and the WOLK 360 is that we really want to help you through the start, through the end of the project process. So I started off as an architect, always wanted to be an architect since I was a little kid. And as I was in the field and growing through my career, I was realizing there's more and more input. You know, as a kid, we read The Fountainhead and learn about Frank Lloyd Wright, and the architect does and controls everything. And when you get into reality, that's not the case. And so what I was seeing early in my career was that the general contractors were really having more control and more input because it was really about project cost and, you know, cost per square foot, or how much does this cost, or you added this corner and that's too expensive. And so I really started getting interested in architecture. I did my undergraduate at UNC Charlotte specifically because they were featured in Architecture magazine as where architects build. And so I always had this idea of integrating. I always built stuff when I was a kid. And I built my sister's cabin up in Alaska. And going through that process really was fundamental. I mean, literally was digging holes and peeling wood beams. And so that's really where it formulated for me that design build is really the methodology. And actually in Europe and Asia, that's sort of the standard. In America, we do it a little different. Kind of like if you imagine the hardware and the software being separated. So I went and worked for a large general contractor, kind of got to see under the hood a little bit and understand how that works. Got my general contracting license in addition to my architecture license at the time. And as I was doing that, I was realizing, oh, there's another party involved, and that's the real estate piece. And getting into, you know, whether you're buying land or buying a building to renovate or buying a house to renovate or do an addition, whatever the case may be. And that people were making decisions before involving the architect and the contractor, and then they were, in some cases, painting themselves in the corner, or they couldn't do exactly what they wanted to do or thought they could do because of height limitations or setbacks or impervious requirements or whatever the case may be, right? So that's where I started thinking, well, we really need to be there at the acquisition phase. So if it's land, if it's, like I said, whether you're buying something to renovate, remodel, addition. And so that's where we added the real estate component. And so we partner with a lot of real estate agents. We love to be there before the acquisition so that you have a full understanding of what you're getting into before you do it. Maybe you've got to spend some money on due diligence with us and some studies. You've got to put some hard money down, but it prevents you from making a bigger mistake or having something that it doesn't satisfy what you need and then turning it on. So that's really where we put together this idea of WOLK 360, and that it's really this idea that it's full circle. And so that's what we do. That's what we focus on. We do partner with other agents, with other contractors, with other designers at different times, but we still want to bring that methodology to the table, even if we're not performing all three functions. Somebody asked me one time, they said, well, are you looking at this now as an architect, a real estate agent, or a contractor? And I said, well, you know, that's a great question, but I can't really look at something without really knowing all three, right? It's all in my head, but I'm not going to step in and take over your role as the real estate agent, or if you're the contractor, I'm not going to step in and take over your role. But I do want to be able to bring that sensibility to the table. And we get a lot of thank yous for that. A contractor that we work with kind of regularly, they're always like, your drawings are great because you understand what it is that we need. And real estate agents many times have been like, man, you killed this deal, but in the end, we found something that's right for my client. So I'm really glad that you actually, went above and beyond. But at first I was upset because you killed the deal because they couldn't do what they wanted, but then it really wound up working out better. And so, sometimes we feel like we're coming in gloom and doom because we're just looking for all the problems. But at the end of the day, you're really getting a better acquisition by doing that and understanding. And at least you still may go through with the acquisition, but at least you understand what you can and can't do. And
Right
so
on.
that's really our business model. And that's what we like to do and throughout the design and construction and acquisition process.
All right, I want to swing back and dive a little deeper on, the advantages. But first I want to ask you, how is Woke 360 different than a conventional design build firm?
So most design build companies, the designers are just that. They're designers, if they're even within the company. And so many times design build, particularly in residential, the builder goes and hires a designer, not even an architect, somebody that draws blueprints, and maybe they've got some standard ones that they use. And in many cases, the client doesn't even meet with the designer and just funnels it all through the builder because the builder's really controlling. They in some cases have already said, oh, we're going to build this house for you for $500,000. They've got to control what they've already committed to, and you're not really getting what you want. So the first big difference is we're architect-led design build. And that's a big difference because one, we're architects. We've got both education and knowledge and know-how that's beyond just somebody that knows how to run a CAD program or, went to a technical school. Nothing against going and doing that, but they just don't have the expertise. And then also now in the build side, you've got knowledge of the design. Why did that owner make that decision? Is it something imperative? Is it a want or a need? And a lot of times what happens is contractors will cut corners to save some money, well, whether for the owner or without the owner's knowledge. And it winds up being something critical. And knowing that from the design process, from the early envisioning stage and all that, it brings that level of understanding into the construction. And when you can have those conversations during construction, design doesn't have to stop with pen and paper and the computer. It can still happen. Their opportunities always present themselves. The owner sees something and is like, oh man, I didn't realize I was going to have that great view of the mountain. It'd be great if we put a window here. Well, we can do that quickly, and make sure that it integrates into the design, that it's not just now it's going to be this funny window that doesn't make sense, So that's really the biggest advantage. And then I really like to say it even starts before that because it really does start when we're looking at the property. When we get that first walk through the property, whether it's land or a building or a house to renovate, understanding what it is that they want, why they want it. Is it the location? Is it something about the house? Is it, the hardwood floors that are, 100 years old and they just love that? Now we know, okay, well, that's something that's worth the value and meaningful, and we've got to make sure that's protected and preserved throughout the process. That adds a level of complexity. So it's really that. It's like I like to say, our hands aren't just dirty with ink and pen. Oh, not many people still do that either anymore, but and boots are also muddy. So we're really out there doing both, and that's what I love about it. And that's, I think, the key differentiator is we really look at this process holistically with you. The other saving benefit really for the owner, and I say this at a lot of introductory meetings, we are going to develop a relationship and a bond. And in many cases, many of our clients become friends. They come to our holiday parties, we go out for dinner because you create such a bond. And early in the process, we had a client and they're all about wanting to have this double shower. They had to have this big shower, two-head shower. And we get very personal with our clients. And so it's like, okay, well, is this a two-headed shower because of efficiency? Because you both get ready for work at the same time and, you both leave the house at 8 a.m. Or is it because you guys like to get in the shower and have fun? And I said, and those are two different, and we got to understand that so that you're really getting what you want. And he laughed and they laughed and they're like, well, yeah, we like to have some fun in the shower. It's like, well, of course you do. That's great. But yeah, now, if it's just for efficiency, there's other ways to do it, so there's that. And then you're really getting into their personal finances. Okay, yeah, I want this $20,000 glass sliding door. Okay, can you afford the $20,000 glass sliding door? Because we can put in a regular sliding door that's like $8,000. But if you want this one that folds up and everything, can you afford it? So you're also really getting deep into their finances and really having to, come up with wants and needs, right? And so, well, you might need the bigger kitchen, and that $20,000, that $10,000 delta might be better spent in the kitchen than on this door. Because, even the biggest budgets, there's sacrifices along the way. And sometimes it's just availability or whatever the case may be, but there are sacrifices along the way. And again, coming back to those beginnings and understanding what is critical and what is important, what's a need, what's a want, helps you make those decisions. And some of those come back from the very first conversation. Remember when we were walking this site, what you loved was this view. Now you don't want to spend the money on the window for this view. Well, that sort of defeats the purpose, right? So it's sometimes bringing those things back up. But that's the real key difference, is they get to form that bond and that relationship with us, and they don't have to go find an architect. They don't have to go find a builder, and then the architect and the builder don't get along, and the owner winds up managing this other relationship that those two people have never worked together, and now they hate each other, and the owner's caught in the middle, and the owner's got a contract with this one and a contract with this one, and those two don't have to work together, and then he needs that, and he's taking too long, and he built that wrong. It's exhausting, and people honestly just don't have time for it. They're not skilled to manage the process, and then they have to go spend more money on getting a project manager or an owner's rep that, quite frankly, I don't think makes sense. But if you're not skilled in managing the process, you need somebody. So there's a whole nother relationship that you've got to bring to the table, which is nothing more than a mediator. So there's a lot of advantages to it. And it really comes down to our relationship. If you like what we do and we like you, and we can be open and honest and share with each other, then we're going to have a great experience.
Yeah, well, it's such an emotional process, Jonathan. I mean, it's your home, it's your dream, right? So leaving that in the hands of, multiple leadership, multiple different people,
Yeah.
That have different pieces of the pie, of course it's going to lead to some issues. So I love that you've found a way to get away from some of that emotionality,
Well, and it is an emotional roller coaster, right? And I tell, you start off by loving us, right? You love us. We put some pencil to paper and we sent you some concepts and you love it and it looks gorgeous. And then we crunch the numbers and you're like, oh my God, it's, 15% over budget. It always is. And then they hate it. It's like, oh, well, we thought we could get this and we thought we could. Then we hammer through it and then they love us again. And then we get started. Then there's problems and delays and difficulties. Then they hate us again. And it's a roller coaster, but that's a normal relationship and it's how you handle it. And we really just try to be very direct. Something comes up, an inspector says, hey, they want this. You're not going to get this. We bring that to our client's attention immediately. Or if it's a project we're doing for ourselves, we deal with it, immediately. But whether it's a home, whether it's a business, whether it's an investment property, it's an ROI, they all have the same sort of issues, but it's understanding those goals at the beginning. If it's all about ROI, then okay, then what do we do to get you the best design that gets you the maximum ROI, and how do we deliver that within your budget to get you the return on investment you're looking for?
I like that.
What makes a home truly extraordinary? Not just how it looks, but how it feels. Solera Reserve transforms daylight into soft, comfortable light, privacy without blinds, beauty without compromise. By day, refined and luminous. By night, an unforgettable glow. Solera Reserve, luxury glass, designed for living. Learn more at advancedglazings.com/Solera Reserve.
All right, we have to talk about sustainable design just a little bit in the show. It's a big part of the show. So we have to. So how often do you have clients that are saying, I want a sustainable home, I want a green home? How much does that come up?
Well, interestingly enough, it's become so part of the dialogue that it's not like it was 10 years ago when people would say, hey, I want a green home or a sustainable home. Now it kind of gets more into the specifics of it, because so much of what we do now is commonplace in sustainability. I mean, our mechanical systems are way more efficient than they ever were before. We spray foam insulation, which is much better than bat insulation, is almost commonplace. We still do a little bit of bat, but really the spray foam, we do that regularly. A lot of just the general materials now are very sustainable compared to, 10 years ago. I did a project, date myself a bit here. I did a project in the 90s for the University of Minnesota, and they wanted this big grandiose project, and they wanted to make a big sustainable, print and say, hey, we're being sustainable. And they came up with the idea, we wanted to use recycled paint. Now, nobody had ever done this at the time. And we did a paint where everybody could bring all their old paint cans and bring them to us so that we could dispose of what we couldn't use in an environmental responsible way, as opposed to people just putting them in their trash cans. And so we took these gallons of paint, literally hundreds and thousands of gallons of partially used paint, and collected them and reconstituted. Well, it was hilarious, and it actually worked with the project. But we basically had like 5 choices of brown. And you put those paint colors together,
Yeah.
they don't give you a lot of, I mean, you can add some different tints and stuff to it, but it's still pretty much a brown.
Yeah.
We had sort of like a light brown to a dark brown, which worked because there was a lot of copper on this building. So it all came together. But back in those days, we were doing really innovative things. But now it's so complex. So it really gets more into specifics of what they want. They want, like low E glass is commonplace, right? So it might come down to a triple glazing versus a double glazing. Are they willing to spend, what's the differential on the spend? We're working with a water flow product now that's awesome. It reduces how much air is in the system versus water, and it actually gets you the amount of water that you use as opposed to what the meter's driving. So you're actually using less water, but actually paying for the water that you're using as opposed to mostly air. And so there's all kinds of different things within the sustainability world, but so much of it now is commonplace. When we did the Proximity Hotel in Greensboro, my partner and I at the time did the design of that project. We were on the cutting edge. We were LEED. We were, it was the first LEED Platinum hotel and restaurant in North America. And we were on the cutting edge of so many technologies that are now just so commonplace. And I feel like LEED in of itself, which is a great program and gives you a lot of good direction, but so much of that is basically worked into the building code now, which you can get into a whole nother discussion on that, whether that's relevant or not. But so much energy efficiency is now part of the building code that you're almost doing it just by building a building today. It's got to be energy efficient. It's an office building. You got to have lights that turn on and off automatically with occupancy sensors, but 10, 15 years ago, that was an option. Now you have to have it. So the lighting, you can't hardly buy fluorescent lights or incandescent lights these days. So it's all really LED and other new lighting technologies that are coming out, so there's so much that's already embedded into our culture, which is great. We're making a lot of strides. Now, what we're looking at, our next level, is really containing the waste, and how do we order the right amount of materials. That's the biggest thing. I think that, like, if you order a light fixture, how much freaking packaging comes in that thing?
Oh, it's
which is, you need it so that it doesn't get damaged in shipping, because you still get plenty of damaged lights. But it's really, when you're ordering a building full of lights or furniture or whatever, and obviously with all the shipping and delivery stuff, how much freaking cardboard we go through as a country, I couldn't even imagine. And so trying to make sure that's getting recycled, like our dumpster company is a downstream recycler. So we don't have to sort it on site. They're doing it, and we've vetted them, and we've been to their facility and have verified that they're doing it. But so now, okay, it's going into the dumpster. We put everything in the dumpster. They're going to recycle what they can. They actually resell a lot of it, which is kind of this whole other thing of when you get into demolition and stuff. But that's the biggest thing that we're looking at, is how do we reduce waste, not just because of cost, because when lumber prices skyrocketed, every piece of plywood and everything, we're like, oh man, don't throw that away. That's $50 right there, And so that's, I think, the biggest thing that we're really trying to contain is waste. What can we do? How do we make sure it's getting recycled? If it's something that's recyclable, how do we make sure that the products that we're using are recyclable, are reusable? Don't throw away a full sheet of drywall or a stack of 4 or 5 sheets of drywall that you've got left over. Take that to the next job. a lot of things like that is really where we're digging into. So that's really more process. But I think that's for us, that's really the next step is what can we do to really tighten up the materials and make sure that we're not overbuying or tossing away stuff that can be used.
Yeah, I had a gentleman on the show a few months ago that created a system of cameras with AI that monitor the dumpsters and make sure that everything goes into the right dumpsters. It was really cool. And then as part of their service, they actually also take the dumpsters. They'll take the recycle and manage the recycle and all that. So, like, they just completely offer the full service on making sure that the waste is segregated and managed appropriately.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's such a huge issue for everyone. So, yeah.
Everybody should go to the dump once in their life. And it is the most harrowing, god awful experience you will ever see. And, you don't think of it. Of course, they always put them in places that you don't see them regularly, right? When you go there and you just get a sense of how much stuff we throw away in a day and from our job sites and all that, it's awful. And so, yeah, whatever we can do to save a dumpster load or make sure that dumpster load is more compact. We're looking at these different technologies, also compressing the dumpster, right? So that when it's a 20-yard dumpster, it's really packed. So you're not also wasting the fuel to make a trip to the dump. You're really maximizing the volume. And so there's all kinds of things in that. But yeah, I think that's our next big thing is, man, where is this stuff going? Because we can't just keep loading it up. It's eventually going to come back to haunt us.
No, absolutely. I love this. Talk about your business model. I want to talk about scaling and growing and how you would grow. Have you considered franchising, or will you just grow by adding people and serving a broader territory? What do you think is the best way to take this brilliant model to a larger
Thank
area?
you for the compliment. The brilliant model. I appreciate that. It's difficult to scale because, I hold all three licenses. I'm the architect, I'm the licensed general contractor, I'm the real estate broker. If you want to take that model and you can build teams around that. So I've got a design team, I've got a construction team, I've got a real estate team, so you can build teams around all of that. But you've got to have, sort of vision and direction in order to do that. And then you've really got to have licensing and back of house support. So there's a whole, every one of those companies is a separate entity to conform to North Carolina law. And you have fiduciary responsibilities in certain ones and you don't another one. And so you've got to really be careful in how you set that up. So that's one of the tricky parts, which is, I think, also why you don't see a lot of them. There's a few of us out there. But it's been a challenge for me to find a real estate broker that doesn't just want to be transactional, right? We're really in the real estate brokerage side of it. We are offering a service. And that's why we partner with a lot of real estate brokers, because we're offering a service. It's not just about, hey, get them into a house, get this house closed. That's obviously a part of the business, right? But we want to make sure that it is what they want. Now, if somebody just wants to buy a house and they just need it painted or the floors changed, we do that too. But our core business isn't that. And so what happens is you wind up with a lot of real estate brokers that they just want to do transaction. We're real estate, we're relationship driven. And in our model, you probably have to show your client a lot more houses or a lot more properties than you would in just a transactional model. So that's one part. But there are agents out there that understand that and like that. And so finding them is the tricky part. You need to find the right one that wants to provide that level of service and not just sell a house and not care, right? On the build side and the architecture side. So the architecture side, you also have to find designers that really understand construction. And in some cases, not afraid to go out there and get their boots dirty or put a hammer in their hands or help move something from point A to point B or whatever the case may be, right? So, and be part of the solution out there when something doesn't go together like it was expected to. And then similarly, a contractor and builders that have an appreciation for the design and they're not just there to bang it out, right? So they understand. A great example for this is we do house flips. We work with some flippers. When we work with flippers, and I say this at the very beginning with them, is we're not going to mask over a problem. A lot of flippers will find mold behind the drywall and they'll just be like, oh, just spray some bleach on it and paint it and let's move on. We will not do that. We find mold, we've got to take that drywall off, we've got to remediate, we've got to probably take the insulation out, replace it. Well, that is an impact to your ROI. I understand that. That's why when we work with flippers, we tell them, you're going in here to renovate this house. You've got to have a contingency. You've got to have a 10, depending on the age of the house or condition of the house, 10, 15, 20% contingency, because there are going to be unforeseen conditions. We can't see it all when we do this walkthrough. And we know there's going to be problems. Now, hopefully we don't have to use all that contingency, but you better have that built into your model, or else you're going to be suffering. And we won't work in any other way than that way. And that's what's, I think, so many flippers are interested in our model, because we offer everything turnkey, but then they don't like that we're not going to cut corners. And so I think it's the difficulty to scaling and really growing it. We're talking about a unique set of skill sets, and finding those skill sets within those different career paths is challenging.
Yeah, I get that. All right, I want to change gears completely. I'm going to drag you into my world a little bit, Jonathan. Yeah. I'm a day lighting guy. I've spent a lot of years, bringing natural light into spaces. How often do people ask for natural light in the home? Is that a commonplace now?
Going back to your sustainability question, the day lighting question is probably the number one thing that when we start and we're out at a site or a house, it's, we need to blow out this wall and make that all glass. We need, constantly asking about, skylights and skylight systems, and really understanding. And we start when we're looking at a site, I explain to people the big difference between a north facing and south facing, east and west. Do you want to have your morning light in the kitchen? So you want the kitchen in the east and your master bedroom in the west, so that, the setting sun? Or do you have a beautiful mountain view and you want to see the sunset? Do you want the house to light up with daylight and not have to have lights on in every single room, and do more task lighting and the windows do the job on a nice day? How is it on a cloudy day? You might have this beautiful view, but you're south facing and it's bright sunny day, man, you're going to get blasted. So, do we do an awning or a canopy or some kind of brise soleil that maybe filters the light? That's probably one of the number one things that we start with, is daylighting. And then, since you're in it, talking about technology, there's all kinds of different technologies out there now. So it's not just about necessarily having a screen or a canopy. It's also, does the glass change? Does it frost? Does it filter the light in different ways? Do you do a tinted glass on one side of the house and clear on the other? Or, how do you look at that and evaluate that? Yeah, daylighting is so important. And when it works, man, and it comes together, it's awesome. And then it's also night, right? Like, how does it look at night? But yeah, it's imperative.
Right. Do you want to bring lots of healthy, beautiful natural light in your building and still meet energy codes? Try Solera from Advanced Glazings. Learn more at advancedglazings.com. All right, this is a very personal question. I used to spend a lot of time in the Carolinas, mostly upstate, but brick houses everywhere. Everywhere it was just brick. Is that still the case? Are you still seeing a lot of brick in the Southeast?
There is. If you're used to coming to North Carolina, one of the most shocking things for people who aren't spending a lot of time here and in the Southeast, you see a job site and it's all that red clay, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's why we have so much brick, because we actually can do it here. It's
right.
Basically comes right up out of the ground that you're standing on all over the place. So that's why you see so much red brick. And going back to sustainability, brick is a great sustainable product. You put it up, people paint brick a lot. The white houses are very prevalent now. And it's like, why would you put up brick and then you paint it? You're taking something that requires absolutely very little service to now you're going to have to paint that thing every, 5 to 10 years.
Right.
It has gotten a lot more expensive than it used to be.
Okay.
So it is challenging in a tight budget, but it really comes down to the type of building that you're doing, commercial building, residential. We were looking at a house that was a brick house built in the 60s, and we really wanted to work around maintaining that brick and then doing the addition in something else. But we really worked around that sort of 1960s red brick and maintained that and the quality of it, because you had a lot of value in that. Because to replace it would probably have been more than the house itself. So, and then the other thing is the gray brick, that really beautiful gray brick that's become so popular, that dark gray. That's not a natural North Carolina product that actually comes predominantly out of the Midwest. That brick is super expensive because now you're shipping it from the Midwest, and it's beautiful. But, a lot of people see it and they're like, oh, we'd love to use that. Okay, yeah, but that brick is twice as much as your standard red brick here. So, yeah, you see it, we use it. I would say we kind of use it sparingly. It tends to be, if somebody has a choice between a nice big window or brick, they choose the nice big window.
Yeah, yeah, I would too. Changing subjects again one more time. We're starting to run out of time, but I want to make sure I cover this one too. Are you getting into like the world of prefab or modular designs at all?
Yeah, in North Carolina, we definitely have investigated a lot of it. We've done some work with it. We've looked at, using shipping containers and stuff like that for residential projects. It doesn't work as well for residential as it does for commercial
Right.
because of the codes and the use and habitability and stuff. But there are different sort of modular systems and things that are getting more cost effective. And now that costs are coming up, in places like California, it's a bit of a no-brainer because your standard building cost out there is $400 or $500 a square foot. Here we're $200-300 a square foot. So it's the comparable value isn't necessarily there yet once you figure out all the things that you've got to do to get it there. So we do some ADUs or tiny houses, and they see them online and they're like, oh, I could buy this tiny house, for $40,000. And it's like, yeah, but that's just the tiny house. That's not delivering it. That's not the foundation for it. That's not plumbing, mechanical, and electrical for it. You've got to get all of that there as well. And then once you do that, now you're back to our same cost. Or they say, oh, well, I love this tiny house, but I want to do this and this to it. Okay, well, now that you're modifying it, now your cost goes up even more. So now you're really at site built. So we're definitely something we like and we evaluate pretty regularly, but it's just not prevalent for us yet. And our stuff is so custom, especially if you're talking about like an addition or renovation, it's really hard to fit that modular into something that's highly unique, but there are definitely places for it and opportunities with it.
Well, do you or some of your contemporaries, are they pre-building walls and bringing,
Yeah,
build the
again,
walls in the shop?
yeah, again, it comes down to, is it more cost effective to build it in that shop in a rural area and then ship it and deliver it versus just building it on site?
Right.
And I think that really comes down to scale and volume. So we've done some hotels in the past that were modular and even, panelized or things like that. And that's where you get some economies of scale and it makes sense. I mean, trusses, right? Floor trusses, roof trusses. I mean, that's modular essentially, right?
It is.
So,
Yep.
I mean, we use that really, but it's really getting into the walls and stuff. Are you building those? Are you panelizing those in the warehouse as well and then delivering them and doing them? And for us right now, it's hard to make it cost effective.
Right. Okay, we're at the point where I ask my $1,000,000 question, Jonathan. I ask this question every episode, and I ask the guest to answer it from whatever perspective they'd like. Okay, so Here we go. What makes a great building?
For me, it's how does it make you feel, right? Like some of my favorite building, it actually gets to your daylighting question. I mean, it's the play of light. It's you come into the building on a sunny day versus a cloudy day. How does it make you feel? How does it look? How does it impact what you're doing? What's its relationship to the outside and the scale and the textures? We've been to several Frank Lloyd Wright houses. Everybody knows Frank Lloyd Wright. Actually have a book or something I want to put together is just, Frank Lloyd Wright, you kind of almost want to hate him, but you love him and everybody knows him and everybody talks about him and for the good and the bad. But we just went to a building, the Hollyhock House out in California that we visited, and it's so freaking exceptional. And what makes it so exceptional? And it's the scale, it's the integration of materials, it's the level changes, it's the lighting, it's the detail. It's amazing. And then similarly went into a very modernist, minimalist house that was equally as beautiful. And so a house especially should do something for you. I think we've gotten into our homes becoming too product or too commodity driven and, what's its value? It's really about how does it make you feel? How does it improve your life? How does it bring your family together? Those are the things that I love about a great building. A real quick story, we're designing a church and they've not had a church built a facility. And so they were meeting in somebody else's and during COVID, they were meeting out in the parking lot because they wanted to get together, but they had to be outside. And so we were talking about that, and this was going to be their first purpose-built church building for the congregation. And they're telling me about getting together and meeting in the parking lot. And I said, what's wrong with that? Why do you need the building? You got together as a community. You had a great service. Everybody brought food. You'd have your food and share afterwards. What were the problems with meeting in a parking lot? And so we started from there, and we talked about, when it rains, it's not great. On hot summer days, it's not great. Okay, so we need a canopy, we need some shelter. Well, it makes it difficult for classrooms and teachings and events and weddings. And so then we really created the program from that basis. And how do we make this building a part of the community that still maintains that, hey, we got together in a parking lot for almost 2 years and the congregation grew to now, okay, how do we maintain those values and those qualities in the building that we're designing for them and building for them? And I love that idea. And I love that they were so embracing and engaging of, let's make it something that enhances our community.
Right. I love it. Beautiful answer. Before we go, Jonathan, is there any announcements or anything exciting news-wise that you'd like to share?
Come to our website. It's wolk360.com, WOLK 360.com. That pretty much, brings you up to date. We got some great projects that we just finished. We got some great projects we're starting up. We show our sketches and things that are ongoing there. And on social media, we're WOLK360DB or WOLK360 on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook, all the socials. And if you see something that interests you, give us a thumbs up, ask a question. We get a lot of questions. We renovated a 100-year-old house, and I've gotten questions from Portland, Oregon and Texas, and asking about some of the stuff that we uncovered and how we solved the problems. And we're happy to help, even if it's something we're not going to necessarily be building or designing, but we're happy to help.
Right. Jonathan, thank you so much. What a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, thank you. This is great. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. You have a great day.
All right, you too.
Bye. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Better Buildings for Humans. For more information on the world's best light diffusing and highly insulating glass glazing, please visit advancedglazings.com.